Hi, welcome back to my channel, my lifelong weight loss journey. My name is Patty, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1980s and the diets that I tried during the 1980s, which was my 20s, surgeries that I had, and any results. So, the 80s was a different time. um, I did have, in 1981 in September, I was having gallbladder problems, and they did testing, upper GI and all that stuff, and then they scheduled surgery. But a week or so prior to the surgery, I had a very bad attack, and I went in, and then they put me in the hospital and scheduled the surgery for the following morning, which was a Saturday morning. And this was a time when they did open gallbladder surgery, not laparoscopic. That wasn't something they did, and this is a small hospital, maybe in Minneapolis or something like that they would have, but not. So anyway, they did an open, and so I ended up with this kind of a diagonal scar that was like 12 inches long, because they did exploratory surgery in these of the other tubes and the other tubes around there to make sure, because mine was full of gravel, and they were afraid that some of that may have gotten into some of the other little entryways, and so they did this full thing. And so it was like 21 staples in this 12-inch scar, and let me tell you, that is painful. I was in the hospital a week, and then when I went home, I had to go to my parents because my apartment was, I was renting the top portion of a house that had been made into 2 apartments. So it was like, of course, upstairs that was on the outside of the house. And they didn't want me going up and downstairs and being by myself, so I stayed at my parents' for like a week or so until it got feeling better. But let me tell you, I made the mistake of laying down flat. During the night you're trying, and I turned, and when I went to get up in the morning, because, it wasn't no bed like it had been in the hospital where you could go and lift yourself up. That was the most painful thing. My mom had to grab my arms and try to, help me get up. And, I walked around with this pillow covering, so, like, in case you had to laugh or cough or sneeze, it hurt like the dickens. But, you live. And, of course, then I started different diets after that. There was like the Diet Center, Nutrisystem was starting to be new, tried those, and, it was, you pay to come in, and of course, like with the Nutrisystem, I had to drive 50 miles one way to go to the closest one, and then you were coming there to see them, and they wanted you to come daily, but I'm like, I can't afford to come daily, so it was like 2-3 times a week. But then you were expected to buy this food that they had, and it was the grossest stuff. It was like the first of the diet food that they were releasing. Oh my Lord, was it awful. Awful, awful. And so, you try as long as you can. And of course, I didn't lose any weight, even though I did have like exercise bench and stuff that I was doing, the leg curls and the butterfly, on the arm. Plus, I was in the morning doing aerobics with they had like on the PBS in the morning, there was a guy, kind of like a Jack LaLanne, but it wasn't Jack LaLanne. He was like 60s and 70s, but it was this other one, Buddy or something like that. But I would do those in the morning with them, doing your jumping jacks and toe touchers and all that stuff that back then they told us we needed to do. And so I did those, and then finally, just trying everything out. I tried the Herbalife, came out, even became of course they talk you into being a salesman, because that's how that first was. They wanted you to sell it, and so you lived on these Herbalife shakes. you forced yourself and did it. But of course, I mean, one of my friends, she lost 20, 30 pounds in no time doing them. I did the same thing and lost like maybe 5 pounds after 2, 3 months. And they were expensive, even as a distributor buying, because you had to buy so many, and it was awful. And so then kept going on, and then I got married in 1987. At that point, I think I got married on Valentine's Day, 1987. I was like 225, which ironically is what I was this January, January of 2025 when I started it. It's right around that same weight that I was. But anyway, over the course, newlyweds, and I love to cook and bake and stuff because that's what I grew up learning to do, and that's what you do for your husband. And of course, he loved all the foods and things that I would cook for him, and so pretty soon, the weight goes on. And then on it's like January 14th, yeah, because it was around his birthday of 1989, that I had gastric bypass. This is like the first ones that they had. And it was open. And especially, they weren't doing this, they were just starting them around that area. And so there was no laparoscopic. And because I already had this big abdominal scar from my gallbladder surgery, so that, wouldn't let them do anyway. And so back then, it was open, and I was in the hospital for a full week. And the first day, you're nothing. They give you one of these little swabs that you can stuck. You had to it was like a spongy type thing that was like lemon flavored, because they didn't want, after surgery, any of all this liquid in your system, and you were on IV and all that. Then finally, when they did start giving, it was liquid, like broth and Jello, and maybe a popsicle, something like that. So for the first couple days, you were pretty much nothing. And then by the third day, there was like 5 or 6 of us that had the surgery. And we had kind of like a little group meeting where we talked, but we were walking the halls for exercise, and, you eat what they bring. And when the first time you got to eat something, if you remember, I don't know, a lot of times nowadays when they bring pills to you, are they in like a little clear plastic cup? Back then there were these little paper ones that were about the size of a quarter around, and then maybe quarter in, and that was the food, the first solid food. It was ground chicken or turkey, and it was in that little thing, which was like at 1 ounce of this food. But boy, you couldn't hardly eat that even, and then you've had some broth or whatever. And then the next day I remember getting some more of that. And I think for breakfast I got like cream of wheat. And pretty much that was it. And coffee they would give me, but I didn't drink coffee. And then for lunch, for the main meal that day, it was like another one of those little ground up meat and like a couple asparagus spears. Oh, and I'd never had asparagus. And the first time trying it, and you get this little limp thing on the plate, and it wasn't like seasoned or anything. I choked it down, but man, it made me hate asparagus. And now I love asparagus once I've had it grilled and know how to cook it, not so that you got this limp little noodle thing. And so by the end of the 7 days, everybody was losing like crazy, and I had weighed 240 50, I think it was, like before surgery. And that whole week you're very limited. Like, first couple days, pretty much nothing. And then like 300 to 500 calories average a day for the other days. And walking the halls as many times a day. And, I lost like not even 7 pounds. And other ones were losing 15, 20 pounds, the other ones that had the surgery. So, of course, this grumpy old doctor that I had, he's accused me that I must be cheating and doing something instead of realizing. And I'm like, how can I be? I'm here. I have no access to that. The people that are coming are not bringing, and I really didn't have, because my husband was working and we lived 75 miles one way, so he wasn't coming up every day. We talk on the phone, and then he came back up to get me when I got discharged. But I'm like, where am I getting this, And someone just accusing you, saying, and now we know, okay, I can't help with that. I was a slow loser, but also my body was broken and things weren't working right. I can't help what my metabolism was, but he made you feel so bad. And this was just awful. And I, end up losing, then you get to go home. And then, of course, I fell. Because it was winter in Minnesota, and I slipped and fell, slid like by my car. Luckily, I caught the car handle. I was sliding under the car, caught, and did that hurt. And then there was an incident. We were in this office, and someone grabbed a chair because there was a bunch, and they grabbed a chair that was already broken, and that's why it had been put aside. And of course, that's the chair I got. And when I sat down, then the chair collapsed, which, tore. And so after that, I had this, I could eat a little more than I had been, but it still wasn't, like prior. But back then they've realized a few years after doing those that they weren't doing the staple line properly, and that's why we had staple line failures, which would I end up having. But so then I had to go back at a 6-month. There might have been like a month or so, which I wasn't losing, and he accused me. And then when I went for my 6-month checkup, I had only lost 50 pounds. And he berated me again that you're not working it, you're not doing it. I'm like, I am walking, I am working out, I am doing aerobic workouts, and just, what can I do? And I was eating the proper things that, they said. And it just really, having a doctor like that, is accusing you and wondering. And then I'm telling him that I've been having these really burning stomach pain, and in the morning when I would get up, I couldn't drink or eat anything. That first thing that I drank, like, it would come up like bile, and I had to like upchuck it. And let me tell you, after you've had gastric surgery and if you have a throw up, it hurts. Years later, it still hurts when you have, because it's been rerouted and so it really hurts. And he's like, well, yeah, because this can cause ulcers. The surgery, something of the vagus nerve and something in there, and it can cause ulcers. So that's what you got, an ulcer. Didn't ask if I had a period or anything like that, because I did have PCOS, which they didn't call it that then, but that's what it was, with the hairy chin and even like hair in your chest, periods, maybe, every so many months. And didn't do any testing before giving me Tagamet. Just said, take this, it'll be fine. And this was in July. Well, so I started taking it, and I wasn't getting any relief. He said I should, in a few days, start getting relief. Well, 2 weeks later, it's just the same. And I was in so much pain, that burning, and, and just nauseous in the mornings and stuff. And so I went to my regular doctor, and he had been the doctor who had tried to help us, had helped us. I tried fertility pills and all these different things, and we hadn't got pregnant, And so he said, well, we'll have to do an upper GI. Said, but first, we have to do a pregnancy test to make sure that you're not pregnant. And okay, so we did the test, and then I'm waiting, and then he comes back in, and he is so excited. He's like, well, we're not going to be able to do the upper GI. And I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, because you're pregnant. He was so excited because he's the one who, he had a big family himself, and he was a younger doctor though, and he was the greatest. I really liked him, and so I was like, oh, okay, which, this was July. I was pregnant. I was like a month pregnant when I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter. And so he said, no more taking that medicine. There was a chance that it could have harmed my baby. They should not have put me on it without checking first, since I told them the symptoms and stuff, the same thing that I told him. And, but, we were so happy. I wanted this baby so badly. I was 29 years old, married. We'd been married a couple years already. And so then when she was due in March, then in October, I had to go on a business trip to Sioux Falls, South Dakota with my boss. And we pulled into Sioux Falls. And of course, we stopped to gas at the car, and it was the bathroom, and I was bleeding. Scared the daylights out of me. And, at that, you're in that first trimester, It was like late September. Yeah, because the new shows were just starting in the fall, so it was like late September. So I was still in that early stages. And so when I told my boss, he's like, he didn't know how to get to the hospital, so he took me to the office there, his office, an office that we owned, but other people worked it, and he had the secretary take me to the hospital, and they did all this ultrasounds where I had to drink all this water, and then so that they could see everything. It was, and then I'd had a tear of the placenta, but it was very little, and so I had to go on rest. Had to go to the hotel, stay off my feet for a couple days with my feet elevated and no stress on to, hopefully heal. And so I was able to do the work that I was going to be doing, which was listening to some of these workers doing their calls, telemarketing calls, and critiquing them and stuff. And so luckily I was able to do from the room, and my boss was so great. And then went into the office on the third day, and then we drove back, and everything seemed good. Then I had another thing, and then I had to go see the OBGYN specialist, and they said, yeah, it was healing, but I needed rest, so I had to stay home for a few days off. And then there was, for the rest of the pregnancy, if I wanted to have the best odds of making it through to carry the baby to term, I had to no vacuuming, like sweep anything that could be doing a pulling motion on your stomach. So I couldn't, our laundry was in the basement of our house. I couldn't carry it up or down, or even pull the clothes out of the washer. The dryer, they're lighter, but they're wet, and when you're pulling, that's a pulling that pulls in your stomach and area and stuff. And so it was very limited. Luckily, my husband is very good. And I had to come home. My boss and I used to have a half-hour lunch while I was supposed to have an hour every day, and so they allowed me then to just work a half hour later. And I went home for an hour and had to like lay down and have my feet elevated for at least 45, 50 minutes of that time until pregnancy. And so, but we made it to the end, and she ended up being born by C-section after 2 days of trying. The water had broke. Tried everything. They did everything stopped. They did oxytocin. This was in March of 1990. And my mom had told them that morning before they did that you're going to need to do a C-section. She said, I just know it. And she was right. And I had been so good. Oh, when you get in when they do that oxytocin drip, man, those pains. Before that, I didn't even feel the pains. The thing was showing that I was having, labor pains, but I wasn't feeling. But when they put that oxy drip, oh, those pains, and I felt them in my back, and I was doing my Lamaze stuff and hours, all day. And then finally about 10, a little before 10 or something, I'm like, okay, I need something. Well, an hour later, they made the decision because I was having meconium staining coming through, which is the baby's first feces, and that if the baby would be being born through it, baby could swallow it, and that it causes complications in the lungs. And this scared the daylights out of me because my cousin had a baby in December, and that happened during her delivery, and my cousin's baby was in the hospital for months they had lung problems and stuff, and they had to go in and try to get that out of her lungs and stuff, and that was not good. And it was scaring the daylights out of me. And then they decided, well, they'd already gave me the pain medicine, the shot, so I wasn't feeling any pain, and my cervix was closing back up. He said, I've never seen anything like this in my whole life delivered. I only got to a 4 centimeters. And then I was closing up. And then the meconium staining, and it had been too many hours since the water had broke. So they decided I needed the C-section. They called the surgeon, but our surgeon provided services for a few different hospitals, and he was away at one that was like almost an hour away. He was doing emergency appendectomy, so we had to wait for him to get back. So they got me all ready, and then so by the time he got back and they did the C-section, she was born. I was out of it because of that medicine, and when they the pain stuff they gave me earlier had really hit me, and I was out of it. But my husband and my mom got to see her right away. She was 9 pounds, 8 ounces, and 23.5 inches long. So no wonder, as I kept saying when they said the baby had dropped, I'm like, are you sure? Because I could feel her up here and down there. I'm like, but she was long. I mean, my husband was 6'3", so, and the women in our family have big babies. And so, but she was a beautiful baby girl and healthy as could be. But they took her, and then they were having problems with me getting my uterus to stop jumping around so that they could close up because of the oxytocin still in my system. It took them a while, so I was in surgery a while before I ever got to come out and see her or anything. But that ends the 80s, the beginning of the 90s. And so the 90s, I went through a lot of different weight loss things to try. So we will see you next time. Hope that you will comment if there's anything you've been through. I like to read those. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.